Now I'm going to demonstrate you the human brain. This is an intact human brain, right? This is how it is. It weighs around 1.5 kg, and including this mini brain, the cerebellum, together it is around 1.4 to 1.5 in males, and in females a little less, around 1200 to 400 grams in females. And this is the, if you divide developmentally, this is the forebrain. Forebrain, is divided into, forebrain actually is called prosencephalon. It has telencephalon, these are the two cerebral hemispheres, the cerebral cortices. This is the telencephalon, and in between the two, this portion here is the diencephalon, right? And then you have a mesencephalon. Mesencephalon is the midbrain, which actually is between here. In between here, this is the upper portion of the brainstem, that is the mesencephalon or the midbrain. Then this one, this much portion here, it is called the hindbrain, and hindbrain has two parts. One is medencephalon, this portion middle here is the bulged portion, the pons and the cerebellum together form the medencephalon, and medulla oblongata, this is the myelencephalon. So this is the hindbrain or the rhombencephalon, and this complete hindbrain, it's lodged within the posterior cranial fossa in the subtentorial compartment. Okay, so then this is the brain. This section actually has been tried to be, coronal section was being tried on this, I think, so that's why it's damaged. The frontal lobes are actually damaged in this. Anyways, I have to just demonstrate the main basic things here. The rest of the things I'll be telling you in the theory classes. Yes, so look here now. The two cerebral hemispheres, like together, the two cerebral hemispheres have this medial longitudinal fissure, and this medial longitudinal fissure, I told you what was occupied here, that's the falx cerebri, and on these two surfaces, what was this blood supply here? The anterior cerebral artery that was running here and supplying the two medial surface of the two cerebral hemispheres. Can you see the two cerebral hemispheres are joined together, like at this point deep inside, and that's called the corpus callosum, right? And the thick band of corpus callosum is a commissural band of fibers. You can see the two cerebral hemispheres, right? Here this corpus callosum has been dissected out, and that's why you can see after slicing the corpus callosum on the two sides, this good thing has been, two cerebral hemispheres have been removed. Okay, so now about the lobes. I think lobes I can demonstrate better on this. This you are seeing is a cerebral hemisphere, right? And on a cerebral hemisphere, this portion, if you see, this one is the medial surface, this is the superolateral surface, and down below is the inferior surface. Inferior surface actually is not very regular, because this portion is the orbital surface and this is the supratentorial surface, of the tentorial surface. And you can see here is the concavity here, this inferior surface. Posteriorly, why is this concave? Because of the tentorium cerebri. The tentorium cerebelli is actually dome shaped. It has a convexity above, and that convexity is actually because of the cerebellum being lodged here behind. Okay, so those were the three surfaces. Now the borders you can see here. This is the supromedial border of the cerebral hemisphere, right? And this is the infrolateral border, right? And this is the infromedial border. This is not well defined, right? Similarly here also, this infrolateral is actually broken up. This is the portion which is the orbital or the frontal lobe, orbital portion, and this one orbital, actually this is the resting over the roof of the orbits, and this is the temporal portion, and this is the occipital portion. Anyways, now let's talk about the poles. Yes, so the anteriormost portion here, this anteriormost portion where this supromedial border meets this infrolateral border, that point here is the frontal lobe, frontal pole, and posteriorly where this supromedial border meets the infrolateral border, that point here is called the occipital pole. And this portion here is the temporal bone, temporal lobe, it's lodged in the middle cranial fossa. The anteriormost portion of the temporal lobe is called the temporal pole. Now about the different lobes. So these all uneven, irregular foldings here on the surface of the cerebral cortex, and these are the sulci. These are all sulci, and these foldings are basically to increase the surface area for the gray matter, the cerebral cortex. Okay, so because of those sulci, there is like elevated portion in between these elevations here. These are called the gyri. So when you see a supralateral surface, this is of the left cerebral hemisphere. In case in Viva, they may even ask like to pick up the hemisphere and tell the sides. So that's easy, right? You can easily just from seeing the corpus callosum also, you can see the posteriorly it's the thickest portion. This is the splenium of the corpus callosum, right? This is the genu, and you can even observe with this inferior surface, which is concave on inferior surface. This lies posteriorly, and there's a temporal lobe facing anteriorly. With all these features, I think it's easy to guess that which side the cerebral hemisphere belongs. Now talking about the lobes of the cerebrum. So in talking about the lobes, can you see here this this sulcus? This can you see the gap here? This is actually the stem of lateral sulcus, and the stem of lateral sulcus, with what does it lodges? It lodges the middle cerebral artery and the deep middle cerebral veins. So this middle cerebral, stem of lateral sulcus is actually, what type of sulcus is this? By the way, this is a secondary sulcus, right? And remember, it was being formed because of the lessering of the sphenoids. So then it has three branches. This one is the anterior ascending sulcus. This is the anterior horizontal sulcus, and this is the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. So this one is a deeper one and a longer one. While because of these three sulci, this portion, by the way, this point here where it branches out is called the Sylvian point, and this posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus is also called Sylvian sulcus. So at this Sylvian point, actually, if you place it in the cranium, this point actually, Sylvian point, is like approximated to the pterion, right? The H-shaped suture on the temple region. So below to that is this Sylvian point, and from the Sylvian point, you seen here, this is the anti-horizontal and anterior vertical, and this one is the posterior ramus. So now what happens is that this portion here, you can see is the inferior frontal gyrus, this portion, and it's divided into pars orbitalis, pars triangularis, pars opercularis, right? There's a very important prominent motor area lodges here, and that's Broadman's area number 4445. Yes, it's the motor speech area. Anyways, so this you're seeing is the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, and what type of sulcus is this? This posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus is an example of operculated sulcus, because on the two surfaces there is a different functional area, and on deeper inside you see, I think you can see on deeper inside there is a different functional area, right? And that's called insular lobe. So so this frontal lobe, actually, talking about the sulci, this, if you see in the supralateral surface, this very important sulcus, right? This sulcus is actually a little anterior to the the sulcus is actually, this midpoint of this supramedial border actually lies a little anterior to this point, the sulcus, and this is the limiting sulcus. This is an example of limiting sulcus, the central sulcus, and the type I told you is the limiting. Why limiting sulcus? Because it limits the two different functional areas, the different types of cerebral cortices. I told you in my histology lecture that the cerebral cortex is a heterotypic cortex, remember? Because although it has 6 layers, most of it is all like the neocortex. What is the archicortex? Archicortex actually is this area, in the inferior surface. Here you can see this is the insula, the uncus, the entorhinal area, the piriform area, right? And this portion of the hippocampus surrounding the perihippocampal area, the olfactory striatum. This area here actually is the archipedium, and this is the primitive cortex, and this is one area which has only 3 layers in the cerebral cortex. And this one is another having important point, that if it's asked, the neurons actually they do not divide, right? They do not undergo mitosis, they do not regenerate, but it has been proved that at this point some neurons have been shown to be multiplying. And another important point about this is that it's here you even find the unipolar neurons. Apart from, remember, one area, one nuclei of the, yes, trigeminal, the mesencephalic nucleus, there was the side where you find the unipolar neurons. Even here also you find the unipolar neurons. Anyway, so the rest of the cerebral cortex is all neocortex. It has made up of 6 layers. But remember the granulocytes, which are meant to be like the sensory receptor cells, while the pyramidal cells are the motor cells, initiation from where the motor impulses descends now. So they differ actually in different portions of the cerebral hemisphere. So likewise, I was telling that the central sulcus limits this area. The area in front is the agranular cortex, and behind it is the granular cortex or coniocortex or dust cortex, right? All these are different names for the granular cortex. It doesn't mean that this area doesn't have granulocytes. This also has granulocytes, but predominantly the pyramidal cells, especially the bed cells. And this is having predominantly the granulocytes, but it also has pyramidal cells. Anyways, so this you seeing is the central sulcus, and then you have is the precentral sulcus, right? And behind to the central sulcus is the postcentral sulcus. So in between the two, this precentral sulcus and the central sulcus, this gyrus is the precentral gyrus. This is the primary motor area number 4. And behind to this is the postcentral gyrus. Postcentral gyrus is area number 3, 1 and 2. That is the primary sensory area. This is SM1 and capital S, small m1. This is the primary motor area. This is MS1, capital M, small s. Why? All of the what it designates that predominantly it has motor in function, predominantly it is sensory in function. Anyway, so anterior to the central sulcus, all this is the frontal lobe, right? And then you're seeing here, like this portion, if you see the inferior lateral border, there is a notch here, right? This is the preoccipital notch, right? This is a preoccipital notch around 5 centimeter anterior to the occipital pole. And onto this surface, this is the supromedial border. Onto the supromedial border, again 5 centimeter above, you find is this parieto-occipital notch. So if you join these two, join these two notches, this much area behind, this area is the occipital lobe. Okay, then this is the temporal lobe, which descends down and it reaches into the, if you see in the middle cranial fossa, it is lodged in the middle cranial fossa. And this posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, which is an operculated sulcus, it's angulated, it bends above like this, right? When it bends above, so this central sulcus, where it joins, it reaches to the central sulcus, reaches the stem of lateral sulcus. This is one point, right? And this already I have divided, right? And this one is the posterior ramus. So what lies in between here, this is the parietal lobe, and what lies below is the temporal lobe, and the other lobe which are hidden inside is the insular lobe. I told you, which is lying here between this operculated sulcus is the insula. Another one is the limbic lobe, right? The cingulate gyrus, this parahippocampal gyrus, and both are continuous here with the help of this thymus, right? This is the suprasplenial sulcus, and this is the thymus. So this, this is cuneus, and this is the parahippocampal gyrus. Cingulate gyrus and parahippocampal gyrus together, this portion of the limbic system. So you got to know about the lobes. You might not be getting it because I'm going very fast. I might be going fast, but if you correlate it all with my lectures, you will understand it. Anyways, so you've got to know about the lobes, and then different gyrus. let me mention some important gyrus. I have told you precentral and postcentral gyrus. Then in this frontal lobe, right, there is this superior frontal sulcus, inferior frontal sulcus, and it's divided into superior, middle, and inferior frontal gyrus. Remember, one of the important content of the frontal gyrus was area number 44, 45, that is lying here at the pars triangularis, pars orbicularis, and that's the Broca's area. Okay, then in the precentral gyrus, you have area number 6 and 8, right? 6 and 8 is actually premotor areas, right? And in the middle frontal gyrus, this area number 6 and 8, when it reaches down here, that is the frontal eye field area. This is the frontal eye field area. And this is the prefrontal gyrus. Area number 9, 10, 11, 12, it also reaches here on the medial surface. And this is the area of the intellect. This judgment, insight, emotions, right? Retention of long-term memories, all this is here. This is making you an evolved human being. Okay, then about this, the postcentral gyrus. The postcentral gyrus is this 3 number 1 and 2. This is the primary sensory area, and in this primary sensory area, behind to that is supraparietal lobule. Actually, this parietal lobe actually has this single sulcus and parietal sulcus, superior and inferior parietal lobules. It's divided, and superior parietal lobule is area number 5 and 7. That is secondary synesthetic or association sensory area, which is actually meant for sensations without visual stimulus. Remember, and that is the sense of stereognosis that is being relayed here. And this inferior parietal lobule, this is the temporal lobe, and this temporal lobe bends here like this in an angle, right? So this continuation of this, it goes here, and on this temporal lobe there are two sulcus, superior and inferior temporal sulcus, dividing into superior, middle, and inferior temporal gyrus. This superior temporal gyrus, when it bends like here, then it reaches here and to form the marginal gyrus, and this middle temporal gyrus, when it bends here, and form the angular gyrus. Area number 39 and 40, this is the this is one which makes you learn the language, to understand the language, to comprehend it, and to correlate with your past experiences, past memory, and actually the power of insight to because of the past experiences on your visual and auditory impulses. So this area is 39, 40. This is the sensory speech area, association speech area. And now this you're seeing is, as I told you, this is the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus, and because it has different it's now percolated sulcus onto the inner surface of the superior temporal gyrus, there is the transverse sulcus as well. So it is like area 41, 42, the primary auditory area, and onto the inner surface of this this one is primary prefrontal gyrus. So this one precentral gyrus, and down below when you reach into the insula, you'll find area number 43, that is the gustatory area. By the way, that angulation where this is angulated, there is this auditory psychic area, that is area number 2, that also is a part of Wernicke's area, that is sensory speech area, which makes you learn understand the language with the help of auditory stimulus. Okay, now looking here is the occipital lobe. In occipital lobe, this lobe has actually this sulcus you're seeing is the post-calcarine sulcus. It also is an example of axial sulcus, and this you can see is the curved thing. This is the lunate sulcus. This also is an example of operculated sulcus. This parieto-occipital sulcus is actually, this is sulcus of the medial surface, right? We'll discuss it on the medial surface. By the way, what is the blood supply here? The predominant blood supply of the supralateral surface is by middle cerebral artery. And remember one fact that I told you, that all the three surfaces, supralateral surface, medial surface, and inferior surface, all the three surfaces are perfused by all the three arteries, right? You'll find the territory of perfusion of the three arteries on three surfaces. So this is predominantly perfused by middle cerebral artery, except a margin of around 1 centimeter or 1 to 2 centimeter along the suprarenal border. This much area is perfused by anterior cerebral artery, right? And this posterior surface here, this much is by posterior cerebral artery on the inferior surface as well. And don't forget that this temporal lobe is by middle cerebral artery. Okay, then now I'm going to tell you about the the medial surface. The medial surface you can see here, the medial surface you can identify is with of the corpus callosum, right? Corpus callosum, this is the lamina terminalis, then you have this rostrum, then you have is the bent, the sharp bent, the genu, then the body, then the spleen of corpus callosum. This is septum pellucidum, and down below is the choroid fissure which lodges the choroid plexus, and this is the callosal sulcus. Above to that you have the cingulate sulcus. This is the cingulate gyrus. As I told you, it is a part of limbic system. And then here you find that the continuation of the central sulcus on the medial surface. This is a continuation of the central sulcus, precentral sulcus, postcentral sulcus that divides into this portion here. That's called the paracentral lobule, right? And remember that this precentral and postcentral gyrus, they have the motor and sensory homunculus, and that was the upside down representation of the body parts, except the head region that was vertical. While this region here, it was the lower limbs. Which portion? Below the knee, the legs, the foot, and the perineum, like bowel and bladder sphincters, they are lodged here. I mean, they are represented here. And the blood supply is by anterior cerebral artery. So any infarct here which will lead to bowel bladder incontinence. Then this is the medial frontal gyrus and medial surface of frontal gyrus, and below here, posteriorly here also you are seeing is this area here. This is this area which is like representing the bilateral synchronized movements, for the bilateral synchronized movements. And this one is this sensory area, and this one here, actually this is the medial surface of the frontal lobes. This is the association motor area. Now this one is MS2, right? This one is MS2, and this is for bilateral association area for synchronized bilateral sequential movements. Okay, there was another secondary sensory area here in the inferior parietal lobule that was for the bilateral, and that was having a bilateral representation of sensory association area. Okay, now look here, and this occipital lobe on the medial surface, this you can see very well. This is the parieto-occipital sulcus, and this divides into this portion here. Can you see this one, this here? This is the calcarine sulcus. This is the parieto-occipital sulcus. There is a layer of pyometer covering it, right? So this portion is called the cuneus, and this portion is called the lingula, right? And in between is this calcarine sulcus, area number 17. Then you have parallel to that is parastride, that is area number 18, and peristride is area number 19, right? So this, and the blood supply of this area is by the posterior cerebral artery, remember? Okay, so posterior cerebral artery will lead to infarction if there is only unilateral. Let's say this is the left side. If left-sided posterior cerebral artery undergoes infarct, what will happen? What type of visual loss will be there? This will be right-sided homonymous hemianopia. Okay, then the inferior surface first. Look at here. Now, inferior surface here, on this frontal lobe on the inferior surface, there is an H-shaped sulcus, right? And this is the sulcus medial most one is the gyrus rectus, and in between here it is this olfactory bulb and olfactory tract that is lodged here. And this I think if it's visible here, no, not even in this. Anyway, so this is the inferior surface of the temporal lobe. Here you seeing is this temporoparietal sulcus, and then you have a collateral sulcus. Remember, collateral sulcus is an example of a deep sulcus, and it indents upon to the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. And similarly, if they ask like another example of complete sulcus is this calcarine sulcus. Calcarine sulcus also goes deep inside and it indents upon to the posterior horn of the lateral sulcus, and that's called calcar avis. Okay, and what about this parieto-occipital sulcus? What type of sulcus? This one is a secondary sulcus. Okay, so medial to this collateral sulcus is this portion called the parahippocampal gyrus. Parahippocampal gyrus continues here. Then there will be entorhinal area, there will be rhinal sulcus, entorhinal, and there will be uncus here, and all that will be a portion related to the limbic system and the primary olfactory area. So that was about this cerebral hemisphere. Now in this you can see there's a brainstem attached, right? So this actually, this cavity here, actually this is the septum pellucidum, and to the lower free margin you can see is the fornix attached, right? And this is the cavity, this is the bulging here. What's this bulging here? This bulging is that of the thalamus, and this is the cavity below to this fornix. This is the third ventricle, right? And this is the portion of the hypothalamus. Onto the floor of the hypothalamus you can see the mammillary bodies, the optic, the isthmus stalk, the infundibulum of the pituitary, right? All this thing. Then this is a brainstem. This is the portion above here, the midbrain, and the bulged portion anterior is the pons, and then is the pyramids. Then this is the medulla. So posteriorly, can you see these are the corpora quadrigemina, right? This is the area. Can you see the 4 tubercles? 2 paired tubercles. These are the superior and inferior colliculus. There's a corpora quadrigemina, and can you see this cavity here, the tent-shaped thing, right? This cavity here is the cavity of the 4th ventricle. And dorsally it's covered by cerebellum. Can you see how beautifully this cerebellum looks? It has a lot of sulci, and these are called folia. The folds here on the cerebellum, there's a folia, and which divides it into different lobules. And this, because the gray matter, like again the reason is this for sulci is to increase the cortical surface area of the cerebellum, and white matter in going inside and branching out like this, and that's why this is called the arbor vitae, the tree of life. What is lying here in between here is tentorium cerebelli. Okay, and this is 4th ventricle. By the way, 4th ventricle down below here posteriorly in the this angle here at the pons and cerebellum and medulla, there is this foramen of Magendie, and from where it's this 4th ventricle reaching out into the subarachnoid space, and there is a cistern here, cisterna magna, right? Cerebellomedullary cistern, and on the 2 sides also opens, and that is the foramen of Luschka into the subarachnoid space. I think the lecture is going beyond limit and it becomes boring if I teach more, so I'll continue later on in some other topic. I'll cover up the details of different parts. Right now I think it's enough for today. Okay, thank you.